Welcome to another guitar and improvisation lessons podcast. We're going to talk about developing language on blues and blues progressions and what we might pull from and play. So, of course, we all are familiar with the minor pentatonic, and that's a B flat minor pentatonic there. And we're pretty familiar with playing that over really all the changes of the blues. One thing to keep in mind with that is to really get into the sound and how each one of those notes sounds with each particular chord of the blues progression. So let's say we had a B flat 13. We're going to find that these two notes on string 3, frets 6 and 8 are going to sound a little bit dissonant on this B flat 13 because we have this note right here on fret 7. Now, it doesn't mean we necessarily need to avoid those notes or not play them, but we want to be aware of that, and we can even use it for our lines. We could create a little dissonance and encircle that note, right, by playing each one of those notes of the pentatonic scale and then play a more of an arpeggio kind of group of tones after that. Which brings up another point, which is you don't have to exclusively use one scale in the midst of a line or for any set period of time. You may want to practice that way and really get into one particular collection of tones, but we can pull from these different scales that I'll be talking about today to create more language, develop more varied lines. Before I go further, please help out the podcast by clicking a like button or subscribing, turning on notifications on whatever platform you're listening to this on. Really appreciate it. Okay, we know we have the minor pentatonic. We could also add a tone to that scale, right, to give ourselves the blues scale, which is a 6-note scale. It has 5 notes in common with that minor pentatonic, and we just have an added tone to it. Okay, so that's a great scale to use and work from as well. And, again, like I said, main thing is to get into the sound and hear how it sounds with the various tones of the chord that is being played at the moment. Now the blues, we move along through these dominant 7th chords, right, in kind of a standard blues progression. And I've been releasing a few blues melody videos, so check that out on the channel if you haven't already. But Sunny Moon for 2 and just released Freddie Freeloader. But we'll notice that we have the dominant 7th type chord moving to the E flat 7. Now, as far as key centers go, we only have one dominant seventh per key. So here we're going to be shifting around. So it's going to be a little difficult to find a one size fits all or one scale fits all the chords kind of thing. So you can work with Mixolydian to study, some of these note collections. So study those relative to the chord. So that was E flat 7 and then F7. And gotta get into those sounds. And earlier I played the B flat Mixolydian. Now, like I said earlier, the minor pentatonic and the minor blues will fit pretty well. Just want to be aware of how each note works with each chord of the blues scale. But let's talk about some other approaches that can help us maybe even outline some of the changes or to vary our lines a bit. So we have major pentatonic, which we can play over the B flat 13. Offers a little bit of tension there. And then we also have the major blues, which, similar to the relationship between the minor pentatonic and the minor blues scale, shares 5 notes with the pentatonic, and we have an additional note going between the second and the third of the scale. And then, of course, try to apply those to the other scales, other chord scales, E flat 7 and F7 as well, and try to get that into your ear and see if you can be creative and come up with some lines to play on that as well. Now, in some jazz blues type tunes, you might have a 2 chord, right? So C minor. So we might play the C minor pentatonic would fit us really well on that. And the F7, we could even keep playing that same scale, although it'll give us a slight dissonance on the 11 there relative to that chord. But in past podcasts and talks, I've discussed a little bit of the dominant pentatonic. You can really outline the changes with that. Right? And that will help to get that sound across. We may also have a 5 of the 2 chord. So then we can develop maybe a little language on playing the G7 moving into the C minor. That can be played as a turnaround at the very end, or something that just kind of sets up the C minor earlier on. So a nice scale to try out there is to take the dominant pentatonic of the G, but raise the 9. And that works really effectively to outline those sounds. So let's summarize a little bit of what we're after here. We know we can solo with minor pentatonic throughout. We want to be aware of how each note fits on the current chord and think of the key as a whole. We also want to be aware that the dominant 7th only occurs in one key center at a time. So if you're going B flat to E flat, when you're using notes or note collections with 7 total notes, you're going to make a little adjustment to the sound. So when you're playing here on the B flat 7, 3 flats, and then we go to the E flat 7, then all of a sudden we have 4 flats, the D becomes flat. Similar kind of thing, you can use circle of fifths on this. With the F7, rather than having 3 flats, 2 flats, right? So all of a sudden the A is natural. So we want to be aware of that if we're working with 7-note type scales. Then understand the connection between 5-note scales and 6-note scales when we're talking about pentatonics versus blues scales. So there's a lot in common between the two. Like the pentatonic earlier, the minor pentatonic, we can play minor blues throughout, or just kind of sprinkle that kind of language into our lines as we go through it. If we work with the major pentatonic, right, we may want to play those for the individual chords as well, and we may want to play the major blues for each one of those. And if we're playing a jazz blues, we need to be aware at times of the 2-5 progression, and then the 5 of the 2, for example, the G7 going to the C minor. For use as a turnaround at the end. Or to simply create tension with the 2 chord, or set up the 2 chord with a little bit of motion towards it. Thanks, folks, for listening. There is a video version of this podcast available. Check the link down below if you're interested. Simply join our email newsletter, and you can view that there on the website. Also, check out our member area on the website, fretprince.com, where we have exercises and talks and live streams and workshops to help you reach your goals with guitar and improvisation. Enjoy your practice session, and I'll talk to you all in the next one.